Now I'd like to invite Director Ursula Liang up to the stage, producer Cora Atkinson up to the stage, and editor Michelle Chang. I just want to say thank you so much for making this film. It's incredible to watch, and I would typically ask the question like, what led you to make this? But I think we know the answer because Jeanette Lee is a badass. And I've been waiting for this to be made. But I'd love to just hear how all of you first connected with Jeanette and how it started to kind of percolate and come to be.
Yeah, I think it came from our great partners at Octagon who have been representing Jeanette for a really long time. When we learned of her stage 4 cancer, we felt it was a really immediate need to make this story and give her that shine. And we started looking for an amazing director and ran across Ursula, and I think the rest is history.
And with that, I just want to say, watching it, we realized how much Jeanette really shaped her own image and presence within the media. And I guess for Ursula, what was that like as a documentarian and media maker of approaching that and kind of showing us a new representation of her?
Michelle definitely had a lot to do with all of this. Michelle is our editor and screened hours and hours and hours and hours of footage where we could definitely see that Jeanette was in control of her own narrative. So I think, part of it was that other, folks had already seen that narrative, and we wanted to make sure that we could dig through the footage and find the in-between moments where she was a little less scripted and sort of present those, as well as presenting the story that she wanted to tell. I think it's really important when you're telling somebody else's story to think about what they would want to be on screen. I come from a journalism background and I want things to be truthful and critical, but also this is about her life. She's given us the access and she's been brave enough to tell her story to the world, and we wanted to honor some of the things we thought that she would want in the film.
Yeah, there is, tons and tons of archival of Jeanette out there, both from her own personal archive and just, out there. So there's a lot of representations of her, but I think the trick is sort of showing what the representation of her was, and then also like finding her like within the footage. And it's sort of like two different things. It's like how she was being looked at then, but then you can kind of look at it from a different lens now and sort of see different things than you would have.
Yeah, I think that's one of the important things about the film. This story should have been told a long time ago, but if it was told a long time ago, it would have been told differently. The way we're looking at the footage and those stories from that era is very different today, and so I thought it was a really interesting time for us to make this film.
Thank you. And then with that, going into just like making the film now, there's so many thematic layers in here. We have issues of Asian American identity. We have it during the time of like the LA riots, and to also have it be made now where there's been so much like Asian hate crimes happening. But on top of that, it's like you see elements of like feminism, women representation, kind of seeing that struggle between two different women identities of like, here's how we should present, and someone being like, actually, I just want to present how I want to present, And then also with that, just like illness, generational trauma, there's so much in there, and I just wondered how you kind of approach weaving in all of those different layers.
Well, Jeanette is definitely Jeanette. She could never be anybody but Jeanette. And it's interesting because she didn't understand, or maybe didn't know how many ways she was affecting different people along the way. She's sort of representative of third wave feminism. She's representing this entire Asian American community, and she's just thinking, I'm just doing my thing. But looking at the footage and knowing all that history was really interesting to piece together that story.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to forget, or it's easy to forget that at that time, like in the 90s, it's different than it is now, where everything's like very identity forward, and that's just like always how you present. But back then, it was a little more like I'm doing it on like my own merits, and it's not about I'm the best Asian American such and such, or Korean American such. I'm just like a badass pool player, and that's how it should be. But now it's like I think you can own both things. Like she was a badass pool player, and she was a badass Asian American. Is very much
to answer that question if you had it for the end of the film. Still is.
Continues to be.
And I think I think it's a hard thing to do to make a story about someone's life. Like, you will never get it perfect. And I think it was really important for us to show the layers of Jeanette. Like, people who think they know her, people who really intimately know her, and everybody in between. Like, she has so many layers, and where she was in the height of her career throughout her whole life and all those different touch points. I think it was important for us to attempt to try to weave it in and make sense of it, because she is so dynamic, and we just wanted to make sure that people understood that none of this was on accident. Like, it was absolutely on purpose, and that's why so many people love her, and that's why she means so much to so many people.
And with that, I mean, you're all an extraordinary team here. What was it like? I mean, how many opportunities? Like, I feel like it's happening more and more, but like, to work with so many amazing women of color on this production, what was that like for you?
Well, it's no accident that we are standing here together, because we all advocate for diversity in filmmaking, and we look and search for talent that looks like us. So we really, I mean, just the three of us in the room, that's like a special thing. And sorry you guys weren't in the room with us, but it definitely, when you're working with people that know your language and know your story, it's easier to work on a story like this. So, you know, it's a special bond that we have standing up here together. And I'm glad that we're all three like able to take a picture so people can see that this is a new filmmaking.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, I think ever since I've been in a position of hiring, it's been very important to make sure that the people who are making the film are reflective of the people that are about the film. And I think that's what everyone should be doing. And I think that it just was a great opportunity that we were able to do that. No one ever told us no, and didn't think twice about it, which I think is a revelation. Like, now to be having done this for so long, hasn't always been the case. So it was really a pleasure to just get to do this with these really badass women.
Thank you. And thank you for doing that work. It's really just opening up so many opportunities for so many other people. So thank you. Now I'd love to see if audience has any questions for this amazing team. Right there.
I mean, I think, honestly, I know it sounds corny, but really, Jeanette just being so open. Like, she never kind of told us no. Like, we went there, and for us, you know, everything's not there in this 50-minute film, but she was super open about, like, every aspect of her life, the really hard parts, the high highs, the low lows, and I just think for people who do this, that is really rare. Like, people hold back, and you know they're holding back. So I think that was like a surprise to know that she really just instantly trusted us and told us her story.
I thought it was also surprising, all the women that we interviewed in the professional pool scene. They're all really badass, and they're all very frank. Sometimes you feel like you have to dig for these sort of rivalry stories, and those women just like tell it how it is all the time. And I loved their personalities. I would love to do a film on each one of them. But that was really fun to me, just not to have to dig for any of that. They were just like, nope, this is how it was. This is how we were.
I also really loved Doris's interview, Jeanette's sister. She really ended up giving us like some really deep kind of perspective on things that I think we weren't like expecting necessarily. And then I think she really understands Jeanette in a way that probably not a lot of other people do, and so that really gave us a lot of insight. So that was a nice surprise.
I think we were also surprised in the edit when we returned and translated what Sonia, her mother, said at the end. We know that English is her second language, so we asked her if she wanted to say anything in Korean, and no one on our film team actually speaks Korean, but she spoke for a few minutes in Korean, and almost everybody, even the sort of the dudeish sound guy, were like in tears at the interview, not knowing what she said, just because the way she delivered it felt very emotional to us. And so that was one of those moments where we knew there was something in there that was going to be important, but we didn't know what she said. So when we got back to the edit and translated that, we were surprised, but very thankful for the openness that her family shared as well.
And surprising, but like also not surprising, Jeanette is a master archival producer. We had so much stuff, and it was really like, to be making films, to pick all the things that we could. There's so much good stuff that we hope end up out there somewhere, but like
I mean,
Jeanette,
she even has VHS tapes of our own matches, so sometimes we couldn't find
Yeah.
a match. It came from a VHS recording that Jeanette recorded herself off the TV. I mean, she's
it was
cataloging
amazing.
it all.
Yeah. So that was surprising because oftentimes and stuff like that you can never find, and we had bins and barrels and bags, and Jeanette gave it all to us to use.
The culture of the tour, you mean? I mean, I think it's sports. People, women are like any other athletes. There are rivalries. If somebody is your rival, there's definitely going to be some bad blood. So I'm not sure any of that has changed. I'm sure that the names have changed and as the positions change in the rankings. But, I think that there's always going to be some friction when you're playing a competitive sport. Making it a film about somebody with a terminal illness is, I think, a very heavy, heavy thing to do. Making films is very difficult, balancing all the things and arguing back and forth in the edit, all of that. But when you're actually making a story that feels like it might be the story, it feels like a very heavy burden. So I think it was a relief when we finally got to show the film to Jeanette, and hopefully on her second watching, she has a positive reaction to the film. You guys may or may not hear that sooner or later. But anything else that you wanted to say?
I think it still remains a challenge making films in COVID, and especially someone who does have a sickness. You want to, I think like Jeanette, I think of her like an auntie, and I just want to protect her. Like, is she okay? Like, let's make sure, okay, we need to get this done, but like, just thinking about all the extra layers you need while making films is hard in this time. So I think just those extra layers just continue to be a thing, and trying to put out good work. It's just a mental puzzle that you keep having to go through. So I think that was one of the harder things.
And I think, Jeanette gave so much, to be a part of the film when times were really difficult. And so I think, they as the team, that were with her did want to be like sort of, protective of her and sensitive. And then, I as the editor sort of have some distance. And, like for instance, in the film, when we're at home in Tampa and, she's in the room, and that's sort of a difficult scene. And I think initially they would have been like, oh my God, like, let's not use any of that because it's sensitive. But it's like important to like show those things. I think that's true to her story, and to like be true to, her struggle with pain, like all her life. I felt like that was really important, although that stuff can be difficult to show too, or you like don't want to get too into it. But I felt like it was important not just to be like, oh, she had pain, but she like triumphed through it. It's like more than that. It's like, it's just continuous, and it's every day, and it's shitty, and it's difficult. And so to be allowed to have those feelings, be a part of it too, was always like a challenge. Because, you want the film to be celebratory and fun, and you don't want it to be like a downer. We always like concerned, like we don't want it to be a downer, and, we wanted to celebrate Jeanette, but also to just allow her to have that too.
Things that didn't make the film that we wanted to. I mean, there are people that we interviewed that we had to cut out. For instance, Edgerrin James, a Hall of Fame NFL player, talking about Jeanette sort of kicking his ass when they were both in Indiana, and really like humbling him as a man. I think he was a man that really thought that women couldn't do anything and couldn't beat him. And also then becoming like a real mentor to him as a pool player. He's one of the best, I think Jeanette would say, one of the best non-professional pool players she's ever met. It didn't quite fit in the way that the film was edited, but it was something that I really enjoyed hearing from somebody like that.
I mean, look, a lot of the stuff that I love is in there because I helped make the film. But, I think, like, I would love to just, like, watch Jeanette play pool all day. Like, it really is that interesting. And that was, I think, a hard part for us, to not just have just hours of just Jeanette playing pool. So we had to pick kind of the most exciting things at the moment that tied into the story. So I think that was hard. We could do a whole nother cut of just awesome pool playing from Jeanette and all these women. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I wish there was more actual pool in the film, and that we could have nerded out a little bit and got into like what it really takes to be like a really good pool player, because it's not always apparent to people. You just see balls going in, and you don't really know all the mental stuff that goes into it. And Jeanette has a lot to say about that too, like what it takes like in your mind to be a top pool player.
Yeah, and Kelly Fisher, like I love talking to her. I felt like the stuff we talked about in our interview was really awesome. There will be some extras, right, online or.
Yep, ESPN has all of that.
Yeah, most of these things will actually be in some sort of extra form.
I think someone kind of mentioned it, but I think people talk a lot about feminism and what it means to be a feminist, and for me, Jeanette is that, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different peoples, but I just think that she is the epitome of that. She did it her own way and didn't care what other people thought, and that to me is taking charge of your life and your body, and as a Christian woman, she did that as well, and I just think she's just such a badass, and I just love that we were able to show all of these parts of what a feminist looks like, and it doesn't look like what you think someone else does. It's what Jeanette did, and I think that was really my favorite part.
Yeah, I think in making the film, I had a discussion with myself about what makes a woman powerful. I was always the person that felt like I had to wear my shirts inside out and baggy pants in order to be respected. So I feel like I fell in that camp of those other WPBA women. But when you actually look at who Jeanette is and who she became, and the way that she not only like built power for herself, but really built power for the community. We're talking about like money actually coming into people's pockets because of what she did. And I think one of the most important lines in the film to me is where she talks about, people criticize me using my sex appeal, et cetera, but I was working with the time, the situation that I had. Like, I think that's a real, that was a real moment of power for me where, a generation ago, people didn't necessarily have the choice to brand themselves in this way or that way. They were just having to survive. If you're a person that grew up with challenges in your personal life and physical pain and all this stuff, sometimes you just needed to survive. But her act of survival and her act of being herself really did empower her and empower all these people around her. So I really think a lot about what it means to be a powerful woman.
I guess there's a couple things I learned. I mean, I honestly knew very little about pool, coming into working on the film. So just the whole history of the WPBA and what Jeanette, as one of the, pioneers of really kicking it up to the next level. I love that whole story and that whole history. It was really awesome. And the other thing, I think was like an important lesson is just that people can they can look like they're okay, and you just never know what's like going on with people. So even people who present like very strong and stuff, like you just never know what's going on, and so it's important to realize that, and that people are sometimes going through a lot.
Thank you all. We do have to wrap up, but I wonder if you have any final thoughts you'd like to share.
Yes, I would like to acknowledge the heckler in the audience. We actually have a woman named Jeanette Lee, the Black Widow, in the house. So if you could please take to the mic, Jeanette. I think the crowd would love to hear from you.
Stable. Woo! Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you. Thank you. And I was also want to recognize my daughter Savannah in the background over here, and my son John, who's over there somewhere hiding, being very chill. But this experience. Am I waiting for someone to ask me a question, or can I just start answering?
Do you?
This experience has been so incredible, and I just never would have imagined that, I don't know, that there would be enough interest to put me on this kind of platform where I would get out and be able to connect with so many people. And Ursula, I think Tom and I were talking about, just looking at different people that we could work with. And it was actually his first suggestion. But then when we were reading, we were like, yeah, she's the one. And then from day one with Words and Pictures, this is like a foolproof team. It's like you guys just have it all so much together, and I appreciate how comfortable you made me, because I felt like, last year when I got hit with the news of the cancer, I have 6 children. So 3 of them are still at home. They're 5 girls and a boy, and my youngest, they were 11, 12, and 17 when I got the news. And my 17-year-old is also on the autism spectrum and has severe anxiety and depression, different things that I have to kind of manage. And they're going to school, and we're in the middle of the pandemic. And then to get this news, like right when I'm not done yet. Like, God, what are we talking about here? Well, I'm not done yet. There's so much more important things. I think as you get older and older, you start to really, you continue to get your priorities straight, right? As you get more knowledge and more experience and more respect for other people and more appreciation for the things you have or the things you've experienced. And I got such an awakening about how do I make more quality out of the time that I have. And there couldn't have been anything better spent than to work with you guys this last year and a half, because it was really healthy for me. Because you're kind of forced to like really look at your life, but then you have these people that are like, we'll take everything and anything, and I see every little picture, every bad hair day, everything for your whole life, and that they're going to be looking at it and deciding what is going to tell my story the most. And I really feel like that was captured, and I just can't. I don't know. I think anybody would have to sit and think about for a while how meaningful that would be for someone who feels like her future is unknown in the next, couple years at the time. Because I had not even started, I'm not sure if we started chemo when we first started talking about the deal, about us making this story. I know that Octagon, we were talking about it, what an opportunity, but I think we could have always created our own story and done something, but with the players we're talking about, this was like a big, big deal, something to celebrate. And then also the benefit from having cancer was to really feel the amount of support. Because I think when you become number one and you become the player to beat, and there are so many people kind of making excuses as to why you became successful and things like that, I'm so used to being defensive. I'm so used to being, you have all the people that hate you, but at least for me as a girl growing up, like when people would hurt you, it would really hurt. I was not in that situation where I was just like, doesn't bother me. Now I could say that because I have so much more comfort in the kind of company I keep. I'm really glad to have the close friends that I have and the family and support that I have, the kids that I have, and the people that Octagon, like, they're very careful about the protective of me, so they kind of wouldn't have been I wouldn't have been put in this situation unless I knew that this was all legit and I was going to be in a good place. But I don't know if you guys have any questions for me. But I do feel that everything happens for a reason. And my mom used to say that to me. I think the first big time was when I had my first scoliosis surgery. My spine was shaped like an S, and it was like 58 and 56 degrees, an S curve, so it was pretty severe. And so it really kind of did change my life. And I love you, Tom. I love you, Tom. Okay, I just wanted to say that, okay. He lost my train of thought because I'm starting to talk too much. But I love you guys, and I'm very happy to be here. And if any of you guys want to talk for a little bit afterwards, I would be glad to. But I'm so forever thankful. And Michelle, I know you worked so hard behind the scenes. I'm sorry. But thank you very much. And thank you for all
The
of
one
you guys
and only
coming
Jeanette
out.
Lee,
I
the
really
Black
appreciate it,
Widow.
too. Thank you.
Woo! Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you.